foundation of good flavor. In order to build a good quality stock, you must have good quality bones, a nice mirepoix, some good herbs, and patience. Chef Lopez here. Today, we're gonna make chicken stock. Today, we're gonna make a white stock. White stock being a clear chicken stock. We're going to use roughly around 8 pounds of bones. And here we have a chicken carcass, deboned chicken thigh and drumstick, some chicken wings, and a leg or two in there, as well as our mirepoix. We have 1 whole onion, 1 carrot, and 1 celery stick. For your knowledge, all you need is 2 parts onion, 1 part carrot, 1 part celery. And then lastly, we have garlic, a bay leaf, peppercorns, thyme, and parsley stems. This would be called the sachet de piece, which translate to spice bag. We are doing it without the cheesecloth or the bag component. We're just going to add it into the stock and strain it at the end. And lastly, we're going to use 1 gallon of cold water. 1 gallon of cold water. So let's get started. So into a medium-sized pot, we're going to add all of our chicken into that pot, right? Get every nice little piece of meat in there. As well as our gallon of water. Now what you should see in the pot is the water being at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches above the chicken bones. We're going to turn this on high flame, and we're gonna allow this to come to a simmer, slight boil. But before it starts getting into a rolling boil, we want to make sure that we skim the stock. So as the stock slowly comes to a simmer, we start to see impurities rise to the top. These impurities are what makes a stock not a good stock. So we want to make sure that we clear these impurities before they are mixed in with the stock, before the stock comes to a boil. So what we do need is a ladle or a spoon and a receptacle to get these impurities out of this stock. Now these impurities are made out of blood. So it is very necessary to start with cold water, because not only does the cold water extract the flavor that we want from the bones, the cold water helps us get rid of any impurities as well, right? So before this stock comes to a boil, I want to make sure that I take my ladle and I carefully remove those impurities. I don't want to agitate the stock, because if I do, what ends up happening is that these impurities will get mixed into the stock. And just put them inside of our container. Now these impurities will continue to rise throughout the time that the stock is actually developing. So stock, white stocks. This chicken stock is going to take roughly around 3 to 4 hours in order to develop flavor. So within those first 3 to 4 hours, within the first 1 to 2 hours, you'll see impurities rise to the top. Once we have gotten the majority of our impurities, we will move our pot so to say to the corner, so that impurities more or less only come to one side of the pot. This method is actually called dépouillage. To dépouillage the pot means to simply move it on the side, right? And the stock will continue like this for roughly 3 to 4 hours. Now, just because we took out the majority of the impurities does not mean that more impurities will rise to the top as hours progress. So we do have to make sure that when we are looking at our stock, we are taking out the impurities to have a crystal clear stock. So once our stock has come to a boil, and you'll see here that it is at a rolling boil, we want to make sure that we lower the heat to a simmer, gentle simmer. And we'll see that by depuaging, or moving the pot to the side, we'll see that all the impurities will move over or shift to one side of the pot, making it a little bit easier to get all those impurities from the pot. We want to make sure that we do lower it down to a slight simmer so that this stock doesn't become clouded with impurities. And as I mentioned, we'll continue to remove impurities from the stock during the first hour to hour and a half of the actual time that it takes to make the stock. Now, the stock is going to have Mirepoix go into it, as well as a bunch of herbs. But we want to make sure that we take the first 2 hours to develop the stock before we actually add any flavor component into this stock. So once again, we're just removing any impurities, making sure not to disturb the stock. And you do want to be careful when you are removing impurities. You don't want to remove any of that liquid. So try to be careful when removing any of the impurities and or fat. So we started the stock at 3:30. It's now 5:37. Stock has been going for approximately 2 hours, a little bit more. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to introduce the Mirepoix. And Mirepoix is basically onions, celery, and carrots. So it's 2-part onions, 1 part celery, 1 part carrot. And all we are going to do is add this to our stock and let that go for an additional hour. Now, it is important when we actually cut our Mirepoix that we are cutting our Mirepoix to large size chunks, preferably somewhere between medium to large dice. Medium dice being 1/2 inch to large dice being 3/4 of an inch. And the reason being is because these vegetables are going to cook while they simmer gently in this stock. What we don't want is mushy vegetables at the end. So the stock is going to go for an additional hour. And the last hour, what we are going to do is incorporate our last ingredients, which are our parsley stems, our thyme, our bay leaf, garlic, and some black peppercorns. When we look at our stock, we see that the vegetables have slightly cooked or become translucent, as you can see with the onions. Now, it is an hour after we've added the Mirepoix. Lastly, what we're going to do is add our bay leaf, our garlic, our thyme, parsley stems, and peppercorns. And we are going to let this simmer for an additional hour. After that hour, the stock will be completely done. All we need to do is strain everything, and we will have our white stock, the chicken stock. So I've strained the stock now using a strainer, and what we see here are the bones that have been utilized for our stock. They are completely broken apart, but what we can do now is make a second stock. Making a second stock out of the bones will not give you a powerful stock, but it will give you a liquid that you can potentially use later when you're making your stock from scratch again. That term is called remoulage. Now, remoulage means re-wetting of the bones. So we are re-wetting the bones that have already been used. So here we have our stock, And what we're looking for is for a nice color, right? The stock not to be too cloudy. I did use a strainer, so I couldn't get everything out of the stock. If I wanted to get it a little bit more clear, I could have used a coffee filter. But at this point, our stock is pretty good and ready for the next stage. Now we have a base of flavor for sauces, soups, or other applications. Enjoy.